What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. I am back from vacation. We will be on our regular schedule this weekend, and we got a lot to talk about. In today's episode. Before we get into that, couple orders of business. This weekend, of course, me and Robbie the Fire Bernstein will be out in Denver, Colorado at the Denver Comedy Works. It's our first time doing a weekend there, and I'm really very much looking forward to it. The shows are very close to being sold out. I think only two of them are completely sold out yet. If you want to grab tickets and you want to come see us in Denver, make sure to go get those tickets right now as you're listening to this, because those shows are all going to sell out. I also, for Comedy Mothership, I checked yesterday. Friday and Saturday are sold out. There were still some seats to the Sunday show. So if you want to come out there, don't say I didn't warn you. Those ones always sell out. So make sure you go grab those ASAP. Also, a little bit of a last minute booking. We'll be out in Denver Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Sunday, I will be getting on a plane from Denver to Tampa Bay, Florida, where I will be debating once again Josh Hammer. This time we'll be doing it at the Student Action Summit, which is a big event that Turning Point USA holds. So Charlie Kirk will be moderating the debate, and a big thank you to Charlie Kirk for putting that together. I thought that was very cool. I'm not sure what I'm not sure. I think we had originally said it was going to be like an Israel debate, but I'm sure we'll talk about Iran in there too. You know, I'm sure that'll all bleed together. So this should be fun. Of course, I debated Josh Hammer. I don't even remember how long ago now. Earlier this year, was it last year? But I debated him over at Princeton,
right?
Yeah, that was the Princeton University debate. So I'm giving the kid a rematch. And it'll go down this Sunday. Hope to see some of you guys out there. And then, of course, the other one is we got Cleveland Hilarities coming up in 2 weeks. Go grab tickets if you're in the Cleveland area. We'd love to see a great club. We always have a lot of fun out there. And then, Rob, what else you got going on?
Well, I've been cooking on podcasts. Check out Run Your Mouth. I just did one with Clint. I did one with Guy Swan. And then, of course, my Zero Hedge series. I did one with Quat the Raven. So I'm cooking along. I got 2 weeks on the road with you, and then back to Porches, which will be in, I don't know, it's like West Virginia and Pennsylvania and all sorts of places. So go check out porchtour.com. You can see the roster of shows.
Yes. Okay. And then the one other thing that I should mention, as Natalie is giving me notes to mention here, for the members only Zoom meetings, which we do monthly, I know I had to postpone it a couple weeks in a row. This Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, those are for the people in the top two brackets over at partoftheproblem.com. Thank you very much to everybody who has signed up. We really do appreciate the support. But we will be doing that 2 p.m. Eastern this Saturday. I'll be in Denver, but we'll be doing it from there. Okay. All right. Let's jump into it. So I guess what we have to start with here is what really just went down last night, which was fairly late last night. I want to say, actually, I could probably see right here. What time was it going at? Well, it was
those are just Donald Trump news hours when he's doing the Sudafed late at night on weekends, 11 p.m. had a Diet Coke can, sits down to get work done and goes, all right, I'll put out the news.
Well, it seems that it was around 10 p.m. last night that this started being reported, and it was an Axios report that kind of broke it. So it wasn't Trump choosing this time, although this does seem to be the time he's up. But the headline is that the Trump Department of Justice and FBI conclude Epstein had no client list and committed suicide. So now, of course, there had already been hints that this was coming. Dan Bongino and Kash Patel gave an interview couple months back where they basically said this. Kash Patel went on the Joe Rogan podcast and reasserted this, that Epstein had killed himself. I posted one. I was already when I'm not on the road and I'm not doing shows in nightclubs, 10 p.m. is about my bedtime these days. The kids wake me up early. So I just posted one thing last night I just said something like, I was like, look, the Trump administration is lying about Jeffrey Epstein. Everybody knows this. And you should take note of who will call him out for that and who will just run cover. I mean, like, this is, it's kind of a bigger theme in a way that I think is a very important one. And basically, it's like, look, I'm not saying like nobody hates the Democrats more than me. You might be tied, but nobody beats me at hating the Democrats. And most of you guys out there listening who think you really hate the Democrats, I hate the Democrats so much better than you hate the Democrats. I'm just really, really good at hating the Democrats. If you wanted to conduct a trial of Joe Biden right now, I got shit from the 80s that I'll bring up. Like, I hate his entire goddamn career. His whole legacy is one of destruction and death and just awfulness. He was just a terrible president. The corporate media, them from framing Trump for treason to the COVID insanity to the Democrats have become the party of war and censorship and castrating children. It's like they're a level of evil that is hard to overstate. That doesn't mean that therefore we all have to become Democrats because Donald Trump is in office. And if you can't look at this and just call it out for what it is, then you're kind of lost, man. And really, in a similar way, like where you would be like, how is it possible that Joe Biden could be forced out? They just throw this cackling retard Kamala Harris in there, and then tens of millions of people still line up to vote for her despite all of that. You're almost kind of the same thing. If you look at something like this, what we're talking about here is covering up a child rapist ring. Like, this is just, I'm sorry, some things should be too far. People gave me shit. A lot of the Trump supporters gave me shit for calling for Trump's impeachment when he launched a war on behalf of a foreign country for absolutely no reason. And I'm like, now, listen, the war didn't turn into a catastrophe, so now they feel for it's, you were, but like, think about the things people have been impeached for. Now, Richard Nixon, well, I guess he resigned before the impeachment really took place, but he was going to be impeached for not planning Watergate, not participating in Watergate, but for not being honest about it after the fact. Okay? Bill Clinton was impeached for lying about cheating on his wife. Donald Trump was impeached for a phone call to Zelensky where they alleged that he attempted a quid pro quo, which never even turned into a quid pro quo because he caved and gave Zelensky the weapons and he never got the investigations into the Bidens that he wanted. Then Donald Trump was impeached again over the nonsense of January 6th. People have been impeached for really lame reasons. And as I forget who the quote is attributed to, but as famously been said, an impeachable offense is anything that Congress decides is an impeachable offense. High crimes and misdemeanors is what it says in the Constitution. What does that mean? Well, it means what Congress decides it means. But I'm just saying, in the grading on the curve of when presidents should be impeached, why the hell should they not be impeached for launching a war, an unnecessary war, an aggressive war of choice on behalf of a foreign country? And why the hell should you not be impeached for covering up a child rapist ring and protecting the participants in the child rape? Is this really that radical of a position to me? Now, I will say, I tweeted that last night, and I have been kind of pleased to see, by and large, even all the kind of Trump supporters I see are really calling this shit out. So I have been really pleased by that, I should say, that almost everyone is like, no, I'm sorry, this is just too bullshit. And I do think a big part of it is because there's just, you kind of can't ignore that this is a blatant violation of a promise, that not only Donald Trump made during the campaign, where he did say he would release the Epstein files. He did kind of, like he said it in a kind of sitting on the fence way, but he did say it. But man, dude, for Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, who have all just been on record straight up saying, We have the files, but even before they were in office, Dan Bongino and Kash Patel went so hard on this issue. Like this is like the equivalent of me getting in and then just like supporting regime change in Iran. And you'd be like, yo, but dude, like you made this your whole thing. You can't just flip like that with no explanation other than trust me. It's just, so I will say, I've seen a couple of the Trump accounts trying to kind of do, and you see people where, I think Laura Loomer or something like that said, this is completely unacceptable of Pam Bondi. You're like, wait, that's as far as it goes? There's no responsibility to the president of the United States? I saw someone else, I'm blanking who this was, but someone else was going, they go, well, what probably happened was the last administration destroyed all the evidence. I mean, after all, it was Christopher Wray who was the head of the FBI. And you're like, oh yeah, hey, remind me, who appointed him? Oh, that's right. Donald Trump appointed him. Then the end of Trump's last term. So like, or not even the end, whenever, but Donald Trump appointed him in his last term. So anyway, it's just all the excuse making. It's just like, look, man, you can hate the Democrats all you want to, but have some fucking dignity. Like, come on, dude. This is just so bad for your soul to lie to yourself and lie to the world like this. Come on. This is just so transparently a cover-up. And it's indefensible. I'm sorry. Like, this is, to me, this is like on the level almost of launching a war based off lies. I mean, okay, I understand like not as many people are going to die or something like that. But you're telling me that there was an intelligence operation to rape American little girls and to and involve some of the most powerful people in Western civilization, and they're going to all get off scot-free when this administration promised that there'd be transparency and justice. This is like, oh my God, this is so unforgivable. It's just such a crime against humanity. I don't know. Any thoughts, Rob? Jump in.
Yeah, well, I think at a minimum, everything in regards to Epstein is still somewhat speculative, although it all seems damning. But at a minimum, this administration has chosen not to be more transparent or to look into it. So just at a minimum, they've decided we are closing the case on this. You can just trust us. It's over. There was nothing to see here. And if there's one thing that certainly channels, it's absolutely having zero interest in fighting the deep state, draining the swamp, cleaning up Washington. I mean, the fact that you're just closing the books on this without, if you actually thought that this was closed case and it is this, you're this sure of the fact that there was no there, nothing was going on, you could probably give us a presentation with some of the details. And who knows, maybe that's coming down the line. But it certainly seems like Donald Trump bluster at the moment of, no, we're telling you nothing happened. And based off of the campaigning, I'm just saying there were themes in the campaign that were promises. He's doing a good job on the border, but he's not doing a good job at possibly cleaning up the deep state. Doesn't seem to be doing a great job of keeping us out of or wrapping up wars. And certainly doesn't seem to be going after Fauci in any capacity. Doesn't seem to be going through on the Doge storyline. So I'm just talking about, if you want to look at the campaign promises that were made, I think there was certainly an interest in the Epstein storyline and definitely in cleaning up government and getting rid of the deep state and whatever these characters are that maybe tried to assassinate Donald Trump, certainly undermined his first presidency with the Russia collusion story, engaged in tech censorship throughout all of COVID. And while you might look at this and go, nope, this is just the Epstein thing, and you can trust him that there was nothing there, the fact that there's zero transparency on why you're now just closing these case files after you kept teasing that you guys were looking into it and that you had something for us, I think showcases to me that all of those campaign promises are just being thrown out, and you will not see any positive movements towards cleaning up government.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, to your point, I think that, and this is kind of like what I was getting at the beginning about like kind of disclaiming that I hate Democrats. And again, for anybody who listens to this show, that's not something that we just say. I mean, from our track record, like nobody's been harsher on these guys than we have. But there is this tendency in politics. It's one of the worst parts about politics is the team sport dynamic. So you think to yourself, well, look, I hate these Democrats so goddamn much that the last thing I want to do is criticize Republicans because that kind of hurts them. And then we got a chance of these Democrats coming back in. But I think the reality here is that so much of the energy that Donald Trump was able to tap into, the reason why he won such a big electoral victory in last November, is because he tapped into people's frustrations with the swamp and with the deep state that you're referring to, that he could run on this. Hey, like, listen, man, I'm running this campaign and everything. I'm putting Tulsi Gabbard in charge of intelligence. I'm putting Bobby Kennedy in charge of health. You know what I mean? Like, we are going to drain the swamp, this most corrupt shadow government that's destroying the country. But when you just totally capitulate on this level, I'm sorry, this is totally going to take away from the credibility of, say, J.D. Vance running in 2028. What's he going to say? No, really? We're going to do it this time? I promise. This time we're going to tell the truth. You are, by allowing this to happen, you're opening the door to the Democrats coming back in 2028 and even in 26 in the midterms. And so, it's just bad all around. And also, as I was saying before, there's just something to there's something that's just for yourself, even if this has no effect on anything else. There's something really corrosive about just lying to yourself, making excuses for just like truly evil behavior. Also, I just think it's so, it's just, I guess it's, to me, I'm just struggling to think of something to compare it to. It's almost on the level of Fauci saying that he never recommended lockdowns. And you like watch it, and you're like, whoa, dude. Like, when sometimes people lie, and then when like there's a lie like that, like Fauci goes, I was never for lockdowns. And you're like, holy shit, really? Really? You have the nerve to just say that? It's like, dude, not only were all of these people on record, they went from the files are on my desk and there's so many that we just have to pour through them that it's going to take a while, to the files never existed. They held a publicity stunt with right-wing influencers and gave them all big binders and had them all take pictures with the binders. Like, this is just too nutty. It's too nutty. And I gotta say, for people, like, I know Dan Bongino had a very popular show. I never watched it. Like, I've seen clips of his show and stuff, and I'd seen him on Fox News. I was never really like a big Dan Bongino fan. Kash Patel never had a show, or maybe he did have a podcast. I don't know. But I saw him on a few shows. But there is something where, like, when Kash Patel did Rogan and when he did that other interview with Dan Bongino, and his answer was essentially, trust me. Like, I'm not just saying trust me, but trust me. I've looked through it. Dan Bongino and him both. It was like, would I be lying to you? I'm the guy who said the things that you wanted to hear. So would I be lying to you now? And it's like, they say it almost as if they're like, I don't know, like they're Ron Paul or something like that. Like I don't trust you like that, dude. I don't have that. The only reason why we liked you is because you were saying the opposite of what you're saying right now. That was your entire street cred was like, I'll go on Tim Pool's show and say Epstein was intelligence. It was a blackmail operation and they have the information and we're going to get to the bottom of it. And then you're like, all right, well, I hope they put that guy as the head of FBI, but like, so like, you can't play on this like credibility when you turning around on this destroys the entire thing that people liked about you. No one supported Kash Patel because he wrote some gay book for Donald Trump. They supported him because he was talking about this shit. Dan Bongino went on Tim Pool and said that he had it on good authority that Jeffrey Epstein worked for Middle East intelligence. Who was he referring to there? You know, like, what are you talking about? Jeffrey Epstein, listen, man, you just can't, like, if you go through it, if you want to, I highly recommend. Daryl Cooper did a very a long form podcast on the subject. But if you're just like loosely familiar with the guy who's at Dalton and then is at Bear Stearns and then is like president or partner at Bear Stearns in a year and a half, and he's money laundering and he's made hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars with none of it's traceable. And then all of a sudden he's partying with like the most powerful people, and he's got cameras in every one of his rooms on his secret island at his Manhattan apartment, and he's trafficking. He's got a ring of underage girls that he's bringing to these areas where there's cameras in every single room. And then he gets caught for soliciting an underage prostitute. In other words, attempted rape of a child. And then he's given a sweetheart deal. And the prosecutor says it's because intelligence came and said he was intelligence connected. And then he's allowed to continue doing this shit. And then when he's finally caught, all of the cameras simultaneously malfunction and he ends up dead. But the story is, oh yeah, turns out there's nothing. Like, no, I'm sorry. Turns out there's something. I'm not claiming to know exactly all the details, but there's a story there. The answer isn't, we looked into it, nothing, moving on. It's just, I'm sorry, it's just too goddamn pathetic. Like, this is just ridiculous.
And for the Trump loyalists out there, I don't think it's unreasonable to have I'd like a little bit more than Donald Trump or Donald Trump's administration set its standard. It could be true. Donald Trump could be right on a lot of things, but just the fact that he says things gives zero reasoning, evidence, or anything to just accept it because it came from Donald Trump and Donald Trump's administration. That to me it's stupid. It's not unreasonable to go, all right, cool. Can you explain it to me? Can you give me your reasoning? Can you tell me the evidence that was there? Are you going to explain to me what changed here that Pam Bondi said that she saw things that were terrible and that they're sifting through the information? They're going to make it available. Can you just at least pitch me what the storyline is here? What is the conclusion that you guys came to?
Oh, no, they don't even seem to want to be doing that. I mean, look, we'll see. Maybe they'll try to come up with something of some like, oh, well, what happened was once we went through the files, we realized these weren't the files. But so far they have not even attempted to do anything. But look, man, you just can't, especially with that ridiculous publicity stunt where they handed out all those binders. And then, it's like, you can't do a 180 this big. You can't break this big of a promise and think you're not going to get shit for it.
I'm a little surprised that they haven't just continued to pretend like they're working on it and just done that and wrote out the 4 years pretending like they were going to do something. I'm a little surprised that there's seemingly a formal announcement that it's wrapped up and done and that's the end of it. And but who knows? Sometimes they like just testing the TV antenna, and maybe if everyone goes apeshit enough, they'll at least explain it. Or maybe they'll say we're reopening the investigation and we're going to go back to redacting files until it gets to the point that there's nothing here.
I suppose we will see. Here, just to drive this point home a little bit, I don't know if you have, Natalie, if you found that Pam Bondi footage, but if not, let's play the Dan Bongino one that I sent to you, because it really is just hilarious to see. Natalie?
That Jeffrey Epstein story is a big deal. Please do not let that story go. Keep your eye on this. Catherine Rumler, we need to keep the heat on this case, folks. There are a lot of people who are knee deep in the Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth about serious allegations out there that Epstein may have had video and audio of people out there doing things they shouldn't have been doing. And you should be asking yourself the question, how is it that all these people, the CIA director, the Obama fixer, Bill Clinton, all intersected paths with Jeffrey Epstein? Jeffrey Epstein isn't with us anymore, and nobody seems to want to talk about it outside of a few entrepreneurial media outlets saying, hey, this is a big deal.
He killed himself. You want me to, I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Listen,
this is what he'll say. I've seen the whole file. It's literally just saying, trust me. And don't listen, man. I'm not one of these people. I've never, in all the years you've watched this show, for those of you guys who are longtime viewers, listeners, I've never talked about like body language or stuff like this, but you could just tell Dan Bongino's saying it with his chest in the first clip. And in the second clip, it's like just like him and Kash Patel, you were ready for them to say like America's the great Satan and Allah Akbar or something like that. Like it's like it was a hostage video. Like I'm sorry, I usually don't even like talk about stuff like that, but it's so clear in this case. And again, sorry, go ahead.
I'm in no place to say this, but his hairline is reverse Pinocchioing as he lies.
Well, it really is something. There was I'm going to race through a few of these topics here because there's just a bunch of stuff that we got to get to. But I will say one thing, that this is something that I've seen very little talk about, but this really is a pretty big deal too, is that one of the things that also happened, I believe this might have been this morning, but the U.S. State Department has officially removed al-Nusra from its list of foreign terrorist organizations, which is just pretty wild. It is pretty wild that we are still maybe not quite as white hot as it was years back, but we're still fighting the war on terrorism. I mean, this is what this whole last Iranian, war was about. That they're the number one state sponsor of terrorism. We still have Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis and all these different organizations. We've been, of course, on bombing campaigns, during Trump's presidency against the Houthis. We still have troops in Iraq. We still have troops in Syria. We still, and yet now we're supposed to make up with Al-Qaeda. We're supposed to make up with Al-Qaeda because, well, the Israelis like them controlling Syria more than Bashar al-Assad, who never attacked an American. It's really just pretty incredible to watch. And I'm not going to go into too much more detail on this. I mean, we've talked about it for years, but it is wild that just very quietly, they just announced, oh, by the way, all the
it sounds like I might have to. I'm going to walk outside and probably find out that it was a false alarm, but I will be responsible and leave and come back. I'll catch you guys in a bit.
Oh, what is this, a fire drill?
It sounds like there's an alarm in the hotel.
All right, here, you could turn it.
I will be back.
Here, Natalie.
I'll be back. I'm going to walk out.
Okay, sounds good. Here, can you just make me full? There you go. So I don't know. There's just something. It is so, I don't know. I didn't realize Rob was podcasting from a second grade classroom, but evidently they do fire drills wherever he is. It is something, it is such, I guess like the thing that would be the through line between the Epstein story and now al-Nusra, our friends, is that it is, and this seems to me to be kind of a common theme in the United States of America in the 21st century, really the entire 21st century, is that it's almost as if the American people are forced into some type of humiliation ritual. Like your leaders are just going to spit in your face over and over again. And we expect you to say thank you. Like it is just such a slap in the face to go, there was this giant pedophile ring and we're just not going to look into it. We're going to allow that to happen. That's it. The same, the same Justice Department, the same legal system that will throw the book at you. I mean, just people do decades in prison for bringing drugs across state lines or bringing guns across state lines. People do serious people have done long prison sentences for defending themselves. Literally, if you were excessive in the eyes of the law, or you had a weapon that you weren't allowed to have. Like if you had a weapon you weren't allowed to have and you defend yourself, someone attacks you, you go do hard time for that. In my state, I believe they have crazy laws about even if you shoot with a legal gun, if you have a legal firearm and it's registered and everything, every T has been crossed and I has been dotted, and someone breaks into your house and you shoot them, you can go to jail for that. You can go to jail for that because I forget the exact standard, but it's like you have to demonstrate. This is true in many blue states. You have to demonstrate that you couldn't escape or that your life was actually threatened. And them breaking into your house is not nearly enough to do that. They'd have to have a gun and point it at you before you're allowed to. So we'll throw the book at regular people for doing their duty or just exercising natural rights. And yet a giant pedophile ring, no one will be held responsible. Oh yeah, the actual enemy of the American people, Al-Qaeda, the guys who did 9/11, we'll make friends with them. It's just, what a slap in the face. And I'm sorry, but why the hell? Someone please explain to me why the hell I should bite my tongue about any of this. Why I shouldn't just be outraged at the Trump administration. It's like these guys had the opportunity of opportunities because the people got behind them to really be a transformative administration. And they've chosen to continue the tradition of spitting on the American people instead. So, screw that. All right. Let's talk a bit here about Tucker Carlson, who once again, as he has a habit of doing, really broke the internet with his news that he was interviewing the president of Iran. Now, the interview itself just came out earlier today. I listened to a portion of it. I have not listened to the whole thing, but he announced a few days ago that he had done this interview. I think he announced on the 4th of July, which was certainly provocative, but it's I guess I would just say this. I think it was funny to watch all of the people freak out about this. And there really is something very revealing about the freak out. It should be said that what Tucker Carlson is doing by interviewing the president of Iran is objectively journalism. That's what journalism is. It's so wild that it should be, if we lived in a sane world, it should be the industry standard of journalists that anytime you're at war with another country, you're on the precipice of war with another country, you're in conflict with another country, the American people should hear from that country's leaders as well. It is insane that anybody does not want you to. And there's a reason for that, okay? Look, objectively speaking, you want to hear that side of the story too. You just want to. If you want to be informed, that's what you want to do. If you want to be propagandized, then you want to only hear from Washington, D.C. Now, the way that people spin this thing. Oh, welcome back, Rob. I'll catch up. I was just we're talking about Tucker Carlson interviewing the president of Iran, and I was simply just saying that that's what journalism is. It's hilarious to see people freaking out about this. It's essentially them admitting, I don't want journalism. I want propaganda. I want to hear what DC says about this conflict, but I do not want to hear the other side of this perspective. And of course, Tucker also had this freak out when he interviewed Vladimir Putin. And one of the things that I find interesting is that with all of the wars, and this is true with literally all of the wars of my lifetime, certainly, and quite a bit before my lifetime, but they're all sold off lies. The American government completely intentionally lies to the American people about what the fight is even over. Like what this conflict even is about. And that's always been one of the challenges, I think, in the new media landscape. It's much easier to kind of get the truth out. But one of the major challenges with all of these conflicts is always that most normie people don't even know what the war's over. Like after 9/11, I love the way Scott Horton says it because it's so true. It's like literally on 9/11, but literally and figuratively, the attack came out of the clear blue sky. Like that is the perspective of Americans. There's just out of nowhere, these fucking jihadists attack us. And if anybody, I am old enough to remember 9/11 quite vividly. I was a young adult at the time. And the question that all of us asked, and this wasn't like some propaganda thing, this was like the real impulse that all Americans asked, like on September 11th, on September 12th and 13th. And it became almost like just like a cliche to say it. But the thing that we all very sincerely asked was, why do they hate us? That was our question. We didn't even know there was a beef. Now, I was a young adult. I was only 18 at the time, something like that, 17, 18. But there were adults who asked that same question. Why? Wait, what the hell? Why do they hate us? And then there was the government to come in and say, they hate us for our freedom. They hate us for our freedom. And that, if that's the information you're going off of, well, then you're going to draw a really different conclusion than if you had ever, say, read Osama bin Laden's declaration of war against America in 1996 or in 1998. If you had ever seen any of his interviews throughout the 90s, if you had read his letter to America, I believe that one was later. I think it was 2002. Double check me on that. But if you had read any of those, you'd get a much different perspective. You wouldn't walk away from that and go, he hates us for our freedom. You'd be like, okay, he's a jihadist and he believes in Sharia law, but there's some very specific grievances that he has here. Now, obviously, when a year or two ago, there was this big controversy where people were sharing Osama bin Laden's letter to America on TikTok. Now, by the way, I wish they had shared the declarations of war from 96 and 98. I just find those to be a little bit more revealing and interesting. But the letter to America had some interesting stuff in it. Now, there were leftists on TikTok who, they're guilty of, I guess, splitting is what you would call. I think that's the psychological term for it, which is associated with like some very severe disorders, but it's also something that people do in general, particularly young people have a tendency to do this. Good guys and bad guys is how my 3.5-year-old thinks of the world. You know what I mean? Like that's just, you're one of the two. But adults are very guilty of doing this too. It's one of the things that a good therapist would try to work on with you. Like if you come into a therapist's office and you're like, my mother's a saint, my father's the devil, they'd probably be like, okay. There's probably a little bit more nuance to it than that. Anyway, a lot of these young leftists, the takeaway for them was like, Osama bin Laden was right. He was right about all of it. And you're like, yeah, okay, that's not the correct takeaway. But generally speaking, I don't think that's most people's takeaway. I don't think that if you were to read his declarations of war or the letter to America, you would go, I don't think, Rob, you would go, well, you know what? I'm a jihadi Islamist now because I just am so compelled by his arguments about Sharia law or something like that. Or I don't think you'd go like, I'm going to join up with Al-Qaeda now and, start fighting against American forces in Iraq or whatever. But I think the point is that when you hear from the other side, it gives you a chance to better inform yourself about what the beef is. And if you go, okay, he's an Islamist who believes in Sharia law. Okay, there's nothing we could do about that. I'm not going to agree with him on that, and I'm not going to allow that to be imposed on me or my family or my country. But when you go, there's this huge, huge beef, his number one criticism of us is that we have military bases on Muslim Holy Land in Saudi Arabia. You would go, okay. Like, do we need those bases there? What's the reason for that again? Is that really worth this fight? You know what I mean? Like, is that? And so you get this, a fuller picture. I saw someone on a prominent account on Twitter who said, I posted something about how what Tucker Carlson's doing here is journalism. And if you don't like that, then you don't like journalism and you like propaganda. Sorry. It was interesting, the responses. One person said to me, they go, "Oh, do I really need to hear the other side of the argument of death to America?" And it's like, yeah, you do. That's the whole point, dummy. Like, what do you want to do? You just want to bury your head in the sand and go, "They chanted death to America. That's it. All I need to know." You're not even kind of interested in, like, why? Why do they chant that? What do they mean? What is the context of that in the Persian language? Like, what does that mean? You know, like, these are interesting questions, and it's fascinating to see people advertise, broadcast that they would rather just shut their mind off. They don't want to know. They don't want to know the other perspective. Like, what are you so insecure about, dude? Like, I don't know. I'm a Jewish libertarian from New York City. I'm not too worried that the mullahs are going to convince me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I'm going to be like, "Oh, that's it. You know, I really, after listening to this interview, I am a radical Shiite Muslim now." Like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So, like, what are you so afraid of about maybe learning why people chant death to America in Iran? Maybe hearing what they mean by that, or what is it that drives that? Like, why are we? It's so interesting how the people will just be like, almost everybody, just about everybody that I'm talking about in these conversations, they all know that Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and, you know, Barack Obama and Joe Biden, they all know that they're all a bunch of fucking lying criminals. I mean, Bill Clinton's a rapist, for God's sakes. Like, what are we even talking about here? But yet, you can't conceive of the possibility that maybe they had a reckless foreign policy that made some enemies. Like, what are we even talking about? Anyway, it's just, I find it fascinating, and I think that it would do a lot of good for Americans to understand more about the Iranian perspective on this. Now, that's not to say you would side with Iran any more than you would side with Al Qaeda, but it does, maybe, you know, it would be good for you to understand the policies that created this hatred and to evaluate whether those policies are in our interest or are just, for that matter. Any thoughts?
Well, it just starts feeling a little bit like, well, it's safe and effective. Can I criticize that? Can I ask for more information? Can we analyze the utility? Nope. Safe and effective. Anything else needs to be censored. Or climate change is a catastrophic risk, and all scientists agree on it. And if you're going to say anything other than that on YouTube, then we're going to have to censor your content, or at least put a little thing on the bottom. So in this case, you know, I read through a summary of the transcript because the translation thing was a little annoying to my ears.
It was rough. It was rough. It was not the way it was done, because it was virtual and there was a translation and there was his voice in Persian and the translation over it. It was a bit of a difficult watch. I didn't finish it yet myself.
And listen, I'm not saying that guy is telling you the truth. Nor am I an expert in Iran to say that they have no interest whatsoever in their own agenda or attacking Israel or funding terrorism in the region, or maybe some sort of an interest in a bomb down the line. I'm not an expert in all these issues, but it is interesting to hear the guy out of his own mouth say, that's not our agenda. We would like to have peace with you guys. We've got a religious decree against a nuclear bomb. We don't have an interest in a nuclear bomb. And I think that these are, you know, when all the narrative that you're hearing is basically that these guys are like bin Laden and they're just looking to conduct terrorism and looking to destroy other people, at least what I remember of bin Laden is he kind of owned that a little bit more. And so it is interesting to hear, you know, it seems like you've got more of a pathway to peace when you actually hear them out and maybe wash away some of the absolute lies that, you know, they're only interested in death and destruction. And that guy could have been lying. But just to censor it off the bat becomes hey, it's safe and effective. Let's not have any critical reasoning here.
No, that's a really, really great point, because I would even go further than you. It's not even that guy could have been lying. It's more like, look, it's a guarantee that he is lying. He's the president of a country. Like, I don't know how, like, you know, it's like the old the best libertarian line in the history of any movie was in The Godfather. when which is still one of my favorite lines in movie history ever, when Michael Corleone decides, after first saying he's not going to, he decides he's going to take over the family business and become the Godfather. And he sees, Kay, his wife, is upset with this decision, and she says, she's like, your father's a horrible man. He leads this crime family. He does all these horrible things. And Michael Corleone goes, my father's a powerful man, like a president or a senator. And then Kay goes, she goes, do you know how naive you sound right now? Presidents and senators don't have people killed. And he goes, now who's being naive, Kay? And it's just a great line. It's like perfectly sums up the whole thing right there. Obviously, it is a given that our government is lying to us. Obviously, it's a given that other governments are lying to their people and other governments are lying to us. The thing is that when you do interviews like this, what Tucker is counting on is that his audience has an IQ over 90. It's also what the entire system of democracy is counting on. The idea that you're going to be able to go, yeah, obviously, this is not a truth teller. This is a representative of a foreign hostile government. But the point is that if you have a little bit of sense about you, you could look at something like that and still ascertain information and still go like, oh, okay. But nonetheless, this is what this leader is saying about the okay, here's what our leader is saying about the conflict. Here's what this leader is saying about the conflict. And one of the things that I think is the most fundamental to the entire, history with Iran and the hatred for us. So there's a couple things. Number one, I'd say this. Now, this is something the Iranian president said in the interview. I did hear this part of it, which I think understandably probably sounds like bullshit to people, but I do think there really is some truth to it. Like there is a lot of there's a lot of propaganda about like the chants or what Iranians have said. It was there was this one guy who was he was some, I can't remember. He was some type of like historian. He was an academic who was studying like Persian history or something like that. And he was the one I heard who pointed at, forgive me, I'm blanking on his name, but he was the one, he pointed out two things. Number one, that, when they always say Iran said they would wipe Israel off the map, he was like, there's no Persian saying off the map. Like that's not a thing. That's a very like English thing to say, off the map. Like that wouldn't mean anything in Persian. And then he was like, here's the actual translation to it. And it was something more of like the getting rid of the regime or something like that. But the other thing he said, which I always just thought was very interesting because I literally heard it from this one guy and then the Iranian president said it too. But he was talking about when he first started studying Persian history and he was in New York City at the time. I believe he was studying at NYU. And then he ended up going to Iran for a while. But he was in New York City at the time, and he got in a taxi cab, and there was an Iranian guy who was driving the taxi. And he said the first thing, because he speaks Persian. So he said the first thing he said as he was in the car is he goes, death to traffic. And he was just making the point that like death to in Persian is not exactly like, there's this one scene, in fact, the movie was so good, actually really well done. Did you ever see the movie? I'm blanking on the name of it, but it was the one where Brad Pitt played General McChrystal.
Yes, it was on Netflix. Yes, I do remember this movie.
War Inc. or something like that. But it was the Michael Hastings McChrystal story. They actually did a really, really good job of it. Really good movie. I highly recommend. But there's this one point in the movie, it's been a few years since I've seen it, but there's like this one scene when Brad Pitt, who's playing General Stanley McChrystal, who was the head of the war in Afghanistan under Obama in 2009. And so he's playing him and he's talking to like these Afghan tribal leaders. And one of them saying to him, he's going that, he goes, one of your soldiers called our men motherfuckers. And he goes, you have to understand, in our culture, to have sex with one's mother is a very shameful act. And Brad Pitt goes, ours too. Like there's this, but you could understand where like there is this gap. Daryl Cooper was making this point the other day, but like there is this gap where like, like to us, if we say, go fuck yourself, we're not suggesting that you like insert yourself into your own anus, right? Like that's not what that means, even though it literally says that. And if you say like go to hell, like, you know, it's not saying I want you to burn in a pit of fire for eternity. It's just saying, I don't like that guy. You know what I mean? And like, so there are just these translation gaps. But aside from that, the much more important thing, and this is true of like every Iranian person that I've heard from who talks about these things in like in an honest way, that's not just a propagandist. This is the thing, right? When you, again, like I said before, when you read Osama bin Laden's declarations of wars or his letter to America, it's very clear. He very clearly lays out what his policy grievances are with the United States. And there's an order to them. Some of them are just incorrect. Like there was one like that was about how we turned a blind eye when China and Russia were killing Muslims, which isn't even really true. But he just says that. But there were other, but the number one, everybody says it's like the number one was that we have bases in Saudi Arabia, that we have American military bases in their holy land. Number two was that we prop up the Israelis and that they oppress the Palestinians. Number three was like our bombing campaigns and the sanctions regime in Iraq. And after that, it was like propping up dictators, artificially lowering the price of oil to increase our standard of living at the expense of the Muslim world. You know, like these were his list. These are not the same grievances that I hear from the Iranians. They don't say the same thing. I'm not saying none of them do have any of those grievances, but I've never heard that this is the hatred of Iran is about your military presence in Saudi Arabia. What Iran's beef with America always is, there's two things that I've always heard come up over and over and over again. Number one is that we overthrew Mossadegh. The CIA overthrew their democratically elected president in 1953 and installed the Shah, who was a pretty brutal dictator. And even though a lot of people in the West, ironically, you know, people like Ben Shapiro, you know, the people who are supposedly Orthodox Jews, but they celebrate how there were women in miniskirts under the Shah. But like the flip side to that is that for a lot of people over there, they didn't very much like having Westernism imposed on them. Like they did not care for that. And so they were upset that we overthrew their democratically elected government and placed the Shah in power. And then the other one is that we backed Saddam Hussein in 1980 and sold him the chemical weapons that he then used against the Iranian people, killed 500,000 of them in a war that Saddam Hussein launched that we backed him in. Those are their major beefs with us that I hear come up over and over and over again. And I'm sorry, but unless you're just like anti-intellectual to your core, unless you just literally just want to be propagandized and to propagandize others, that's vital information to have. Because when they just say to you, they chant death to America, the implication, the obvious implication there is that these are just such backward, horrible, fanatical people that just hate us, that there's no dealing with them. But when you look at it and you go like, well, first off, the chant death to America isn't exactly saying I want to murder you. It's more like go to hell, like the way we mean that. And then you realize that there's these very specific reasons why they feel that way that really almost nobody can defend. Like, who the hell can defend overthrowing the government of Ukraine and installing the Shah so that British oil companies could keep their profits? Who's defending that in 2025? That was a wise decision for the CIA to make in 1953 for literally no other strategic reason than oil. Like, I don't even think anybody is arguing that there's another one. Maybe some people are, but that is the reason why. I haven't heard other people argue a different reason. And then who the hell can say that we were right to support Saddam Hussein using chemical weapons in a war of aggression against Iran? We were right to support him, even though we had to go fight 2 more wars against him and ultimately overthrow him. So it's not even like we're defending the policies that they hate us over. And I'm just saying, like, how is that not a valuable piece of information that does, you have to admit, I think if you're being honest, at least change the way you look at the conflict a little bit? And it doesn't mean you're going to become a mullah. It doesn't mean you know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean you're going to become a radical Shiite. It just means that you'd go like, okay, in this conflict, the criminals who rule over me in Washington, D.C. have some guilt. They have some blame in this conflict. I still root for my country. I don't have to root for the criminals who rule over me in Washington, D.C. And I don't have to root for the criminals who rule over the Iranian people in Tehran. It's like, but it's good information to know that this is a big part of the beef. This is a big part of the reason why there's so much anti-American hatred over there. And so anytime you're potentially going to war or in conflict with another country, the idea that you wouldn't want all of this information out there, I mean, what does that do? It just leaves fertile ground for propagandists to tell you like, oh, well, no, this is they hate us for our freedom. Therefore, I guess we just got to go kill all of them. Because what are you going to do about that?
And on that note, look at the beginning of the current Russia-Ukraine war, where if instead of being called Putin apologists, there was a better narrative of the fact that Putin just did not want NATO expanding all the way into Ukraine. And perhaps all of America could have agreed, hey, we don't really need NATO to be in Ukraine. The administration hasn't sold me on why this is so important. And maybe we could have dodged that war. And guess what? Imagine if it turned out that had nothing to do with it, and then Putin decided to invade Ukraine anyways after Biden made the announcement of, all right, no more of this NATO talk, as opposed to what he did, which was basically say we refuse to say that Ukraine won't be in NATO, and essentially provoked it. You guys can go read Scott Horton's book with that title. But imagine if he then went ahead and invaded Ukraine. We'd be in the exact same place. We'd literally be in the same place.
No, we wouldn't even be in the same. No, you're absolutely right. It's a really important point. But we wouldn't even be in the same place. We'd be in the same place with Putin having no leg to stand on and no one being able to even justify it. I mean, imagine if NATO had signed the draft treaty that he sent to them, just promising that we wouldn't put Ukraine in NATO, and then he had done the invasion anyway. Well, then, okay, then we'd be in the same place, except the Hawks would have a much stronger argument. The problem is that they know he wouldn't have. They know that that's the whole thing. And so they have to say, no, don't even hear about that. This war isn't about NATO, even though it obviously is.
That speaks to just hearing them out and the ability to clean out the propaganda of the Warhawks, so that if you're in an environment where they're just looking to push for war, it becomes as safe and effective to not just be able to hear them out. Because imagine if they just have very simple grievances that the American public can go, well, I don't really care about all that much. Why don't we just not have bases or not put NATO right into Ukraine? I can agree to that. That doesn't really affect my life. And then you can actually not have these wars. But when they absolutely don't want you to hear the grievances, I think that kind of showcases who's really engaging in propaganda.
100%, dude. And I'll say one more thing on this, that because I saw a lot of people were saying like, well, no, the problem isn't that Tucker interviews these people. It's that he gives them puff piece interviews, and he's not grilling. He's not going to do the same thing he did to Ted Cruz, to Vladimir Putin, or to the president of Iran. And just in response to that, because I also think that's a really stupid criticism. I think that, first of all, it should be a totally different dynamic, the way you would interview in America, the way you would interview one of your representatives in the Senate. I mean, okay, like technically Tucker's not a Texan, but like when you're in the Senate, you do kind of represent America in a lot of ways and not just your state. There's a totally different way that you would interview your, government. Like I said, if you remember back when I was talking about how Zelensky kept calling the vice president JD in that Oval Office fiasco where Trump dressed him down real good. Like Joe Rogan had we had talked about it privately a little bit, but he publicly said on the show, so I'm not giving anything away, that he was trying to set up a podcast with me, him, and Trump at one point. It never ended up happening, but whatever. Would have been cool. But I remember saying to you that listen, I wouldn't have been a pushover if I ever had a conversation with Donald Trump, but I would have called him Mr. President the whole time. I would have shown him more respect than I just show the average war hawk or something like that. Because there's different situations, different things call for different things. But the point is that, and in fact, I think often, not necessarily, it depends on how you do it. Interviewing is a real skill. It's a skill that is made to look effortless and easy when you're good at it, but it is not easy. But sometimes you would get a lot less of value out of like a very hostile, aggressive interview with a foreign leader than you would out of just like allowing them to talk. In the same way that like, Theo Vaughn, when he had Donald Trump on his show, he didn't give him a tough interview at all, but that's not what Theo does. That's not really his style. But what Theo did was actually incredibly valuable. And we've seen Donald Trump sit down with journalists who are going at him a million times. We know exactly how that would go. Nothing would have new or positive would have come of that. But Theo Vaughn sitting down and talking about addiction, and then Donald Trump being like, what's cocaine like? What does it feel like? And then Donald Trump talking about how his brother killed himself with alcohol. It was like a side of Donald Trump you had never seen before. And that's like, there's value in that. There's value in learning something more about your leader. And likewise, I think there's value in just like allowing the foreign leader to have their piece. Our leaders get their piece too. And like, what are we so insecure about? It comes down to like the whole thing that censorship is always about. It's like, dude, if you really believe you got the truth on your side and you got a more compelling argument than the other side, then what the hell are you worried about? Why do you need to silence them? I don't want to silence any of my critics. I'm going to debate Josh Hammer again. So I already won big in the Oxford voting the last time we debated, but I got the offer and it's like, oh, this will be in front of a whole new crowd. And a really important crowd to talk to. Turning Point USA, it's young right-wingers. That's exactly who I want to talk to. The next generation of people. And so like, I don't know, I think I'm right. So I'll go debate it again. I think my arguments are going to be better than yours, like they were last time. Like, so again, I just don't, there's a real insecurity, and it comes from a place of dishonesty. When you just like you don't want the other side to be able to be heard. You go, I don't think you're worried that the mullahs are going to impress Americans. So just think about that. How crazy that is, that we've put ourselves in a position where you're worried they might win the argument. It is wild. All right. We did not get through all the topics I wanted to talk about, but I do got to wrap there. We got some stuff for tomorrow. So I will see you tomorrow. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, everybody, for viewing. Come out and see us. Denver this weekend. And then, of course, I'll be in Tampa Bay debating on Sunday, Cleveland, Austin, Texas, Rob's porch tours all over the place. porchtour.com, comicdavesmith.com. Also check out Run Your Mouth and Rob's your new show on Zero Hedge as well.
Cooking through interviews. Thank you, sir.
There we go.